SpongeBob animation errors. Most of us have fond memories watching cartoons on Sunday mornings when we were younger, right? And we're also pretty sure that SpongeBob SquarePants is probably one of everyone's favorites. But this legendary show also had its funny flaws, and we have been searching for them. So get ready, because here are some animation errors and surprises that probably you didn't notice while watching SpongeBob SquarePants. Waiting. Who doesn't like the idea of receiving new presents? Well, in this episode, SpongeBob is in this situation, and what a great feeling. Let's take a look. During this whole episode, SpongeBob is waiting for the arrival of a new toy that he got after sending and eating 99 boxes of cereal called Kelpo. This is a really hard task for someone to do, but for SpongeBob is one more trial to face and accomplish. Let's take a look at this scene and see if he is able to eat all that cereal.
In the box tops? Before eating all the cereal? Gary, you are a genius!
If you look closely, after SpongeBob finishes eating the cereal, he has milk all around his lips. But after he finishes eating, he starts talking to Gary, and when the camera moves again, the milk is no longer on SpongeBob's face. Maybe the animators forgot about this little milky incident for a second, but this is not the only funny error we found in this episode. Let's continue on.
Want to do some karate?
No, I'm busy.
This might be hard to catch at first glance, so we will give you some information so it's easier to see. Karate gloves have been a recurring item during Sandy's appearance in the whole series, because we all know that she loves martial arts, and probably there's no better squirrel at it in the whole world. Strangely enough, Sandy's gloves in this episode are red, while the other times we see her wearing these gloves are green. Maybe it's just a coincidence that she's wearing SpongeBob's gloves during this episode, but we found it really funny. Oh, and even though Patrick broke SpongeBob's toy, the episode had a happy ending after all. Chimps ahoy! Talking about Sandy, did you know that she is one of the best inventors in Bikini Bottom's depths? That's what the episode Chimps Ahoy is all about. Like we said, Sandy is one of the best inventors, but let's take a look at this scene of the episode where Patrick tries to follow the squirrel's profession and tries to be an inventor himself. Enjoy it.
I've invented a parallel universe!
That's a mirror, Patrick. It's already been invented.
Oh, somebody keeps stealing my ideas!
Well, I thought it was a pretty good idea.
Have you found anything strange? If you look at the moment where SpongeBob is looking at himself in the mirror, his reflection isn't wearing his safety helmet. This is really cool to find. This helmet is a very important item in the whole series, because without it, our protagonists won't be able to survive inside Sandy's house. The Fry Cook Games. Are you ready to see the most important sports competition in Bikini Bottom's history? Much like we have the Olympics, the Fry Cook Games are Bikini Bottom's version of sports' most important competition. But it wouldn't be as important if SpongeBob and his friends didn't participate in it, right? For sure, they will be the show's star participants once more. Maybe you were not concentrating enough while watching this scene of the episode, but we found something strange here. Let's take a look at it, focusing on the people watching the competitions. Did you notice something? There are some replicants of the blue fish that are watching this compilation of sports. If you look close enough, you might discover that there are various of the same fish in the stand. What a strange moment. But this is not the only one we found here. Let's jump into the next scene.
Pinky.
Almonds? Curse him, that's good. But perhaps a bit too highbrow for this crowd. He thinks he's better than them!
This is really hard to notice, but if you look at the moment where Plankton is moving closer to Patrick, he is talking, but there's a moment where his lips are not moving while he's talking. It's a really hard one, but funny nonetheless. Squidward in Clarinet Land. Have you ever heard about Clarinet Land? Well, if you haven't, SpongeBob has you covered. In this strange episode, we find Squidward discovering the weird world of Clarinet Land, a separated universe from Bikini Bottom that he encountered inside Mr. Krabs' Navy locker. This trip to recover Squidward's clarinet is filled with strange moments and creatures of the fantastic world of Clarinet Land and the Horned Forest. One of the most memorable ones is the bald eagle that Squidward encounters at the end of the episode. Let's watch it together.
Appreciate your tone.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
This is a sacred place where clarinets can live without persecution. You need to learn respect.
This moment brings with itself a really funny animation error. Maybe hard to find though, but we trust in yourselves, and with a second look we will find them together. When the eagle is talking to Squidward while having him wrapped with his tongue, there's a moment where Squidward's eyes move and go to the back of his head. Maybe he's so scared of this eagle that his eyes couldn't stand watching that monster any longer. Or maybe it's just a common thing in the mysterious land of the clarinets. We will never know unless we also use Mr. Krabs' locker. The Way of the Sponge. We talked about Sandy before, right? Let's take a look at this ode to karate in the magnificent episode, The Way of SpongeBob. In this episode, SpongeBob works his way into becoming a black belt in karate, but much like in an old martial arts film, the way of the sponge is not easy to follow. But to achieve this, SpongeBob will have to pass the tests of Sandy's old master, Fuzzy Acorns, who seems to be the best martial artist to ever live. In the end, both SpongeBob and Sandy got their talent as martial artists recognized, but let's check these final moments of the episode.
Fuzzy! Fuzzy! You look terrible!
Okay,
Sandy, what's wrong with Fuzzy?
I know what he needs. He just needs this.
no more talk.
Have you found something strange? It is a really fast moment, but there's a moment where Sandy gets duplicated. This is probably one of the hardest ones to find so far, but it's a really cool one. Skill Crane. We all associate Squidward with his great talent as a musician and his effort as SpongeBob's best friend. But what about him driving and using a crane? Did you expect that? Well, Skill Crane is that episode. But much like every other episode we analyze, we found a small error in that episode. Probably you didn't notice at first. But have you looked closely at the workers that were aiding SpongeBob and Squidward while they were using the crane? This might be a great clue because if you look at one of those fishes, you can find that his trousers change from brown to white in 2 consecutive scenes. We also like to give secondary characters a chance, so we thought that this was a cool one to highlight them. Blackjack. Who doesn't have an annoying relative that used to ruin our family reunions? Well, here we present you to Blackjack. Blackjack is SpongeBob's distant cousin, and in this episode, our yellow squared hero thinks that he has kidnapped his parents. What a bad familiar this Blackjack is. After being released from prison, Blackjack pays a visit to SpongeBob's parents, and he even challenges SpongeBob to a wrestling match for the safety of Bob's mom and dad. Will our hero win? Let's watch some moments of the episode to find this out.
That tickles.
Just like the old days, eh, cousin?
Yeah, Blackjack. You haven't changed a bit.
Well, if you haven't got enough of Blackjack, we'll show you this super special moment. If you watch closely, when Blackjack shrinks and SpongeBob looks like a huge spongish giant, something seems to have changed in our protagonist's outfit. Any clues on that one? Well, there's a moment where suddenly SpongeBob's belt disappears from his pants, only to come back a few few moments later. Maybe this was a way to demonstrate that SpongeBob doesn't need a belt to win against his evil cousin. Or maybe the animators forgot about this trademark part of Bob's outfit. Who knows? We will show you some goofs and animation errors that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1. The Krabby Chronicle. SpongeBob for sure is a great chef, but what about being a writer? Well, in this episode, Mr. Krabs had our protagonist working not only as Krusty Krab's best hamburger maker, he also turned SpongeBob into a great writer for his own newspaper. Well, even if SpongeBob is learning a new job, we found some scenes that had some mistakes in them. Let's take a look at them quickly.
And he appears to be waiting for the bus. This is the kind of breaking story my readers are waiting for. Patrick Star, I'm Scoop SquarePants from the Krabby Chronicle. Everyone's wondering, what bus are you taking today?
SpongeBob! What's the meaning of this?
Meaning of what, Mr. Krabs?
Local resident watches poll? No one's gonna pay to read this malarkey?
This mistake passed right before our eyes when we were watching the episode. But hey, starting a new job is a really hard task to complete. So let's look at this scene where SpongeBob takes some pictures of Patrick for Mr. Krabs' newly created newspaper. When SpongeBob takes those pictures of Patrick, our favorite starfish doesn't seem to be in his happiest mood, but a couple of moments after, when Krabs is arguing with SpongeBob about how he did his job and how he wrote the newspaper, the photos of Patrick that appear show him with a big smile. Well, this is funny because we didn't remember that Patrick wasn't as happy the first time SpongeBob took photos of him, but for sure it is something that animators also forgot. But some more scenes from the episode also caught our attention.
Plankton's chum made of your chums? The chum bucket serves your friends in more ways than one? What? Who's to blame for this? Who?
Plankton is usually a pretty evil mastermind, but this time he tried to deceive all of us. When Bikini Bottom's resident villain reads the fake article about the bad service that he offers in the chum bucket, the article reads, "Plankton's chum are made of your chums." But when Plankton reads it, he adds a line that doesn't really appear in the newspaper. He says the chum bucket serves your friends in more ways than one. Well, this may be a strategy to make the article more dramatic, or maybe someone forgot about that line being shown in the newspaper. Number 2. The Good Krabby Name. Let's continue with more episodes of SpongeBob having multiple funny professions. Well, this episode might have SpongeBob working to promote the Krusty Krab around the whole town of Bikini Bottom. But that doesn't exclude itself from having some funny and questionable scenes that we can talk about.
It's eat or be eaten. The giant patty has eaten my buddy!
Relax, Patrick, it's me. This is just a costume.
Cough him up, you monster!
Patrick is for sure a very visceral starfish, but we had to have our eyes really open to catch the mistake that happens during this scene. Were you able to catch it? Well, when Patrick is fighting SpongeBob while our protagonist is wearing the Krusty Krab costume, SpongeBob drops some flyers to the ground. A couple of moments after, when the camera zooms out of the two friends fighting each other, the flyers are nowhere to be found. Maybe Patrick is so strong that he made them disappear.
Time, where have you been? I'm out of here.
Fire up the grill, laddie, and get ready for customers. And Patrick, buy something or get out.
Oh, boy.
Squidward was really angry in this episode due to the way that Mr. Krabs handled things, but his anger left us with a cool mistake that even we weren't able to catch at first. Well, when Squidward exits the Krusty Krab, he manifests his discomfort by throwing his employee hat onto the ground. Such a bad employee, isn't he? Fast forward a couple of scenes later, and when everybody is ready to enter the Krusty Krab right before Mr. Krabs chooses his last customer, and poof, the hat is nowhere to be found. It truly is a magical hat. Number 3, boating buddies. Seems like SpongeBob doesn't know when he's crossing the line with his friends, especially when things involve Squidward. This episode has Squidward going to the same boating school as SpongeBob in order to learn how to properly drive a boat. This sounds like a wacky adventure from our two favorite protagonists, but this adventure also had its fair share of errors. So, let's look at them together.
I have it, Squidward. You gave it to me to leave you alone yesterday. Squidward, you can have the $5 back. Mr. Krabs says that—
I don't care what Mr. Krabs says!
SpongeBob's clothing is the main suspect for many of the animation errors that we can find in the show, but did you catch this one? Well, after Squidward offers $5 to SpongeBob in exchange for leaving him alone and being able to enjoy the morning, SpongeBob gets scared for a second. It is that precise moment where SpongeBob's belt changes from black to white. What a cool error to find in this episode.
everything I know, and then
We won't be doing anything because there is no we. Understand?
Quiet in the front, please.
Remember that we told you that SpongeBob's clothing is the main suspect when searching for some animation errors? Well, this scene had a cool one to find regarding his belt again. When everybody is sitting in the boating class, you can see that SpongeBob's side belt disappears. We hope that from now on, everybody pays more attention to our protagonist's clothing. Number 4, sun bleached. Who's ready to get sun bleached? Well, this might sound like your typical beach, summer-oriented episode, but having a great time during summer doesn't exclude you from having some animation errors, right? Let's check them out.
I used Patrick's tanning booth, and I stayed under too long.
Oh, this is too precious. You're sun bleached.
This is a really hard one, but have you found it? Well, when Squidward is shouting at SpongeBob about how bad his dry state looks, Squidward's neck disappears for a couple of frames. This might be a fast one, but for sure is another proof of Squidward needing to control his anger. Let's move on to another scene. Somebody should revise how people write their signs in Bikini Bottom. This spelling error might have been overlooked by many of us, but if you look closely at the Bikini Bottom summer shindig, the word shindig is misspelled because even if the sign had to use the word shindig, it is written as shinding. Hard one to catch. Number 5, nautical novice. He might not be the best driver around, but SpongeBob impressed Mrs. Puff with his knowledge of boating history on this one. Well, even if SpongeBob's knowledge surprised us all on this one, we found some cool and funny scenes to show you. Let's take a look.
It's working! She's noticing my vast knowledge. I can now taste the sweet, sweet lamination of a fresh boating license.
After demonstrating his knowledge about boating history, SpongeBob says the next phrase to Mrs. Puff. I can now taste the sweet, sweet lamination of a fresh boating license. Well, if you looked at SpongeBob at that same moment, his teeth turn yellow for a small frame. Bragging about something is never a cool thing to do.
Oh, my gravy! He even knows the hearty laugh. He has been doing his homework.
Ha ha ha!
We saved the best for last, and this might be the hardest error to catch in today's video. Did you notice anything strange happening to SpongeBob's tongue? Well, if you look at our hero's tongue when he is maniacally laughing, there is a small moment where his tongue disjoints from his mouth and it's seen flying through the air. Many parts of SpongeBob's body changed during this episode. Even the biggest blockbusters have had mistakes, and these are some from SpongeBob that even longtime fans probably never noticed. Number 1, a changing door. Seems like SpongeBob caught a little bit of trouble at school during this episode. In the episode The Bully from the 3rd season of the show, a bully joins SpongeBob's boating class to kick his butt. When Flats the Flounder enters the classroom, he tells SpongeBob that he's going to kick his butt. SpongeBob at first assumes him to be joking, but Flats soon makes it clear that he really means to beat up SpongeBob. An extremely paranoid SpongeBob tries to seek help and to reason with Flats, but to no avail. But that's not the only problem that SpongeBob has to face during this episode. Let's watch this strange moment closely and for a little bit. When Flats enters the classroom with his scary and strong aura, he seems to enter class right from the outside of the streets of Bikini Bottom, which at first can of course seem the most normal world. If we jump a little forward in the same episode, the next time SpongeBob tries to enter the class while escaping from this cold-hearted bully, he enters from the hallway of the school. Weird, right? Usually the door of the class leads right to the hallway of the school, but maybe Flats had scared even the animators and they didn't want to cross him while walking inside the school. One way or another, this boat school seems to have magic doors. Or maybe it was all planned from the beginning by the animators of the show.
Come in, SpongeBob.
Number 2, a monstrous change of nose? The legend of the Yeti is scary, right? But who would have thought that even a Yeti can go underwater and visit Bikini Bottom? This funny episode from Season 9 tells a really curious story and one that for sure everyone will remember. The adventure starts when Mr. Krabs tells a story of a Yeti crab that eats lazy employees, which makes SpongeBob work in overdrive. Poor Bob. Seems like he can't catch a break with his work at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob is frightened by the story and works extra hard, while Squidward continues being lazy. At the same time, the Yeti crab comes out from a mountain and goes to the Krusty Krab, as he is hungry. When SpongeBob sees him, he panics and works even harder than before, while Squidward thinks he's Mr. Krabs in disguise, just to discover later that the legend was true. But let us take a look at the design of this Yeti and what we've found in this episode. When the Yeti crab is presented to us as spectators, he has white fur, a red nose, big muscles, and a very strong musculature. Did you catch every detail? Well, there are some frames in which his aspect changes a little. First, when we see this legendary creature screaming and spitting at Squidward, suddenly his red nose turns white. But this is not the last time where his nose changes from red to white, because when we see the Yeti talking to SpongeBob inside the Krusty Krab, his nose has again switched its colors. Of course, it's hard to catch legendary creatures on camera, and obviously sometimes legends aren't exactly as they look when told to us. Or maybe it's just one small yet funny error that animators were not aware of.
Of course he is. Nice costume, Eugene. Couldn't you at least have it dry cleaned or pressed? Didn't brush this morning, did we?
Number 3, a changin' house. Seems like Mr. Krabs' greed is even capable of provoking errors from the animators. In One Krabs Trash, Mr. Krabs holds a yard sale at his house where he passes off his and other people's garbage as valuable antiques. Patrick and SpongeBob come by, and Mr. Krabs tricks them into buying a plunger and a soda-drinking hat, respectively. After they leave, several people come by, and each of them offers a large sum of money to Mr. Krabs for the soda-drinking hat, prompting Mr. Krabs to get it back from SpongeBob. Of course, being the kind of crab he is, the way to recover this valuable object is not going to be fair, and that is where we found something interesting. There's a moment in this episode where, in search of the aforementioned hat, Krabs decides to go to SpongeBob's house at night and steal it while our protagonist is sleeping. The curious thing is that, unlike other times where we've seen Bob's house, the room where he sleeps is on the first floor of the building, instead of being on the third like most of the time. Seems strange, doesn't it? Also, when Krabs is leaving Bob's place, we see that Squidward's house is also missing. Another little detail that the animation team forgot.
This'll scare him.
Number 4, who stole the cash register? Have you ever thought about your boss being a robot? Well, that is exactly what happens to Squidward and SpongeBob in the episode Crabborg. One night, SpongeBob and Gary watch a scary movie called Night of the Robot, which is about robots that take over the world, and it shows a live-action robot chasing a live-action human. Ironic, right? Gary tells SpongeBob that he should not watch it as scary movies freak him out, but SpongeBob denies this. But the next day at the Krusty Krab, he's become very paranoid and believes that robots are everywhere, including even thinking that Mr. Krabs is one of them. As if watching post-apocalyptic robot movies is not enough for Bob to be scared, we were able to find a little animation error in this one. There are some moments where, while in panic of the boss being a robot, we see Squidward and Bob screaming in the boat that there is just outside the kitchen of the Krusty Krab that the cash register has disappeared. But a brief moment later, when Krabs goes to the bathroom, the cash register appears magically. Imagine that a greedy person such as Krabs has lost his cash register. He for sure was not happy with the animators and what they did to him.
Now listen, what did these robots in the movie look like?
Well, they had piercing red eyes, metal pinchers for hands, and they ran on batteries.
Number 5, the chum bucket goes missing again? Before in the video, there were missing houses, so I am sure that this is not the first time we told you about buildings that suddenly disappear from their original place in Bikini Bottom, right? To show you this, we're going to jump to Plankton's Army, an episode of Season 3 of the show. In this episode, Plankton has a new idea for his nefarious plans to steal Krabby Patty's secret formula. After trying and failing to recruit some thugs at a nightclub, Plankton remembers that he has thousands of relatives across the sea and invites them all over to the chum bucket, imagining them all to be evil geniuses like he is. But things didn't work as he planned at first. In the first compasses of the episode, we see that a mysterious robot that tries to enter the Krusty Krab to order something to eat, this might be revealed to be one of Plankton's schemes. But if we take a look at what happens on the outside when this robot enters the restaurant, we find one of our dearly beloved animation errors. We know that the biggest competitor of the Krusty Krab is, of course, the chum bucket, but in this frame, the chum bucket is nowhere to be found. It is funny that disappearing buildings are one of the most common errors in the series. Or maybe it's just that Plankton was too tired of failing his plans that he closed his own restaurant.
What a quaint restaurant. I think I will sample their wares.
Ooh, how weird. A machine made to look like a customer.
Number 6, a new product in town. Continuing with the most famous hamburgers in the depths of Bikini Bottom, what would this city be without the delicious Krabby Patties? Well, this animation error might seem like a little one, but even the best lunch of this series can't save itself from animation mistakes. In the incredible Shrinking Sponge, SpongeBob must figure out how to do his job after accidentally shrinking himself. It is funny that after getting bit by an urchin, the grill's heat turns to very hot without SpongeBob noticing. As SpongeBob cooks, he becomes increasingly hotter and sweatier, and after some moments he notices his mistake too late and is shrunk down smaller than his spatula. But this is not the only thing that changes during this episode. Maybe not in size, but in name? During the last part of the episode, when Mr. Krabs hammers the personal hygiene service sign, the galley grub says Krabby Patty, i.e., instead of Krabby Patty with a Y. Maybe Bob is not the only thing that changes in shape or size in this episode.
Now what could I do with a little SpongeBob?
Personal hygiene service! Did you see that?
Number 7, disappearing handcuffs. She may not be one of the main characters of the show, but how could we forget about our favorite driving teacher, Mrs. Puff? In the episode Bumper to Bumper, we see that SpongeBob is trying to pass the driving test for the endless time. And even Mrs. Puff wants to help him in this hard task. Would it be enough? Of course, this adventure won't be a SpongeBob adventure without its wacky moments, and this episode is no different. After a police officer catches both Puff and SpongeBob speeding and driving in a very reckless and dangerous way, he ends up stopping them, and not only arresting Mrs. Puff, but also ripping SpongeBob of his newly acquired driving licenses. Such bad luck. It's here at this moment where we found this little animation error. When Puff gets put inside the police car, she's wearing handcuffs like every dangerous criminal, but in the next frames, when she's telling SpongeBob that she will have her vengeance, the handcuffs have disappeared and are nowhere to be seen. Maybe Mrs. Puff has some hidden abilities, or maybe the animators didn't consider her a really dangerous criminal after all and forgot about the handcuffs. So get ready, because here are some funny goofs that you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Pickles! Can you believe that during one episode, SpongeBob forgot how to put pickles on Krabby Patties? Well, usually the first seasons of shows have some kind of errors, and SpongeBob wasn't the only one who forgot how to do things right in this episode.
I hear SquarePants.
Well, we hope you noticed something strange in this scene. Maybe it sounds strange or you didn't notice, but did you look at SpongeBob's spatula? When SpongeBob arrives at the Krusty Krab, he's wearing his awesome working hat. But in the scene in which he sees his reflection on the spatula, his hat is nowhere to be seen. Maybe the animators forgot that SpongeBob was wearing a hat in that scene, or maybe he took it off screen. Anyway, this is a funny thing to see. Also, it's very rare to see a spatula without slits, right? Well, it seems like the slits only disappear during the scene in which SpongeBob looks at the spatula, because during the rest of the episode, it is filled with them. Let's continue this episode because we found some more errors here.
I hear SquarePants is back.
I'm right here, Bubble Bass.
This might be a little hard to see, but in the scene in which SpongeBob is ready to confront his nemesis during this episode, we see that something strange occurs to our protagonist while he's opening the door. If you look closely, it is possible to find that, for a brief frame, his eyes change their colors, becoming achromatic. For sure, SpongeBob got angry on this one. Remember, guys, never underestimate SpongeBob's talent in the kitchen. The paper. Have you ever played music with just a piece of paper? Well, it seems like SpongeBob is capable of anything. In this classic from the first season of the show, SpongeBob decides to make Squidward angry by using a piece of paper as his favorite toy. Well, SpongeBob's talent is so big that he even plays and composes music with that same piece of paper. Let's take a look at some scenes from the episode.
I didn't play any wrong notes.
Yeah, see, you're playing it like this. When ordinarily it goes like this.
This one is for music enthusiasts, because if you look closely at the scene in which SpongeBob is playing music with his favorite piece of paper, none of the songs and melodies that SpongeBob plays coincide with the notes that are shown. This is so goofy. Also, we found that at the beginning of the episode, both SpongeBob and Patrick's houses are missing. Let's look at one more scene before we finish this one, shall we?
Well, that's the last of it. I've given you everything but the shirt off my back.
When Squidward is telling SpongeBob that he will give him everything he has in exchange for the paper, SpongeBob's teeth turn yellow for a second. Such a funny episode this was. Neptune's spatula. Do you want to have a little chat with Neptune? SpongeBob received a visit from Neptune himself in this episode from the first season of the show, and in this episode he has to demonstrate to the god of the seas itself that he has the material to become a royal cook. But let's look at some funny moments from the episode, shall we?
The light changed.
Patrick?
Hold on, almost there.
Sure is royal fry cook material. I don't suppose you have any proof.
When Patrick takes the picture of SpongeBob holding a golden spatula, he has his mouth wide open and there are clouds above him. However, when Patrick shows Neptune the picture, SpongeBob is smiling with his mouth shut and there are no clouds in the area. Another cool detail from the episode is that, depending on the scene, the color of Neptune's skin changes from frame to frame, adopting lighter tones every time he appears on screen. What a godly attire. Crabs a la mode. Do you believe that at one time Mr. Krabs turned the Krusty Krab into an ice rink? Having a plan to boycott the Krusty Krab's existence, he decides to turn off the heat in the restaurant. But being the mastermind of business that he is, Mr. Krabs always has a trick up his sleeve, and he uses this chance to transform the restaurant into an ice rink. After seeing this, Plankton puts up a sign saying that the chum bucket is warm and comfy. Everything goes south and Plankton gets very angry when he then sees the customers go back into the Krusty Krab with winter wear. Mr. Krabs has turned the restaurant into an ice rink complete with a Clamboni ride for children. And even SpongeBob has invented patty skates to help him, Squidward, and the customers keep their balance. One of the most curious things from this episode is that customers even prefer cold Krabby Patties. This is even better for Mr. Krabs because he doesn't need to cook them, costing him even less money. So let's take a look at which goofs we've found here.
Squidward, you're always going on about your book club. Read this.
Do not touch thermostat ever.
Seems like somebody forgot how to use the thermostat here. This might be a funny one to catch, but when Mr. Krabs tries to put the thermostat back to the temperature it was before, he moves it in the wrong direction. He was trying to warm the room, but instead the temperature decreased on the screen. Strange, right?
Bit sticky this morning.
Well, an icy restaurant has its cool things, but also its strange ones, right? If you pay attention to the cash register, there are some shots in which the machine is frozen and some others in which it's not. Maybe Mr. Krabs didn't think about this one. A friendly game. Ready to play some mini golf? Well, like you've seen in this episode from the 8th season of the show, SpongeBob decides to build a mini golf inside his own house. This SpongeBob guy doesn't cease to surprise us. Let's watch some cool scenes from the episode and see if we can find some goofs. Did you see what happened when SpongeBob and Patrick hit their balls into Squidward's house? For sure, bad things were supposed to happen, but when SpongeBob walks around blindfolded and destroys Squidward's things, he breaks the same window, even though the window was already broken. Bad boy SpongeBob, he got a negative note on this one for crashing Squidward's things. Did you see what happened with hole 3? Well, this third hole is a really special one because, depending on which scene from the episode you are watching, you might find that it has different obstacles. Maybe animators tried to be super original on this one, or maybe they forgot about how they initially planned things. Well, for today, we bring you a very special topic. Get ready, because here are some strange theories you can find in SpongeBob SquarePants. Number 1. A nuclear experiment? The internet is home to many SpongeBob-related stories, especially those which try to find exactly where Bikini Bottom is located. If you've invested some of your time investigating those theories, you'll have found that every indication leads us to one special place. One of the most popular SpongeBob SquarePants theories claims that Bikini Bottom is located right underneath Bikini Atoll. To give you more context about why this is a very important place, Bikini Atoll was chosen by the United States as a nuclear weapon testing site. The United States used these islands to experiment with nuclear weapons more than 20 times, making it a radiation-heavy site. So maybe that's why we see both SpongeBob and his friends having mutations with their bodies and minds warped by the nuclear waste above, thus giving birth to our favorite characters. We, of course, are really against using any natural locations to make experiments, but this is a great way to explain the origin of Bikini Bottom's population. In many websites, this is also used to explain why SpongeBob has such a weird way of clothing himself, since it looks like his clothes have a correlation with the times in which those experiments were made, and also why Squidward's clothes look like the ones from our granddads. Number 2, a problem of global warming. Jumping from one natural disaster to another, we're pretty sure that everyone is aware of what's going on with global warming and its consequences, right? Well, it seems that many people associate SpongeBob SquarePants with a metaphor of how global warming is influencing the world. Let me explain. Imagine that SpongeBob is the representation of human waste and pollution. Then, Mr. Krabs, as SpongeBob's big and cruel boss, is a representation of the large corporations that cause pollution. And Patrick, as SpongeBob's best friend, represents the Western civilization. All of this is due to his laziness and innocence, representing the personality of those who aren't aware enough. Finally, Squidward represents all those who call for action against climate change, but because no one shares his interests, he's constantly ignored, creating a bad relationship between him and other inhabitants of Bikini Bottom. We hope that this theory makes you think about all these environmental problems because they are really serious. That's why we're sure that both writers and animators are pretty concerned with this and try to make others think about how dangerous global warming can be. Number 3, what are the Krabby Patties made of? During the show's 20-plus years of history, there has been one question lurking all around Bikini Bottom. What are the Krabby Patties made of? What is it that makes Krabby Patties so delicious? As SpongeBob fans that we are, we know that it all comes down to a secret ingredient that only Mr. Krabs knows, and there might be a sinister reason why he's keeping it hidden from everyone. Many people on the internet believe Mr. Krabs is a cannibal who makes his burgers with crab meat. Some even say that he is the murderer of many of his friends. That would explain why Mr. Krabs is seemingly the only crab in town, and some even speculate that the long-absent Mrs. Krabs was a victim of his scheme. Do you imagine that Mr. Krabs killed his own wife to make one of Bikini Bottom's most famous burgers? This is for sure a nightmare-fueled story, ideal for Halloween season. But Mr. Krabs being a cannibal is not the only theory that is built around what the secret ingredient of the Krabby Patties is. We also found another theory that is also interesting. Let's check that out. What if Mr. Krabs only serves burgers that taste like crab? This argument claims that Mr. Krabs engineered a convincing imitation of crab meat, and that is the true key to his success. Crustacean customers get all the great seafood taste without the soul-sucking guilt of eating their best friends. It's why they prefer the Krusty Krab to the rival Chum Bucket, which serves real chum, which is non-imitation fish parts. Well, much like in the real world, where some people prefer to be vegan or vegetarian, it seems like some people are also worried about the health of Bikini Bottom's population. Number 4, SpongeBob is a real prodigy. If you've been watching the show for a long time, you've been able to see SpongeBob doing many things. How could this be? In various episodes, he can be seen mastering a variety of complex skills that range from sculpting to the development of a series of intricate bubble-blowing techniques. Also, we have seen him being a stunt double from many other professions. Here are some of them. Well, we have gathered information, and according to one Reddit user, it's because SpongeBob SquarePants is arguably the most gifted yet underachieving creature shown on TV. His reasoning to make this strong statement is that Bikini Bottom's resident sponge can pick up just about any skill on the fly, master it, and go on to produce something extraordinary with it. This might explain why the animators have put him through many difficult tasks in the show's lengthy history, and how SpongeBob has been able to finish all of them, and in most cases, end up being victorious. Please tell us in the comments which are your favorite SpongeBob jobs and adventures. Number 5. The characters represent the 7 deadly sins. One of the most famous theories that runs deep on the internet is the one associating the 7 deadly sins with the main characters that we see in the show. In case you don't know, the 7 deadly sins are a group of vices that you can find in Christian teaching. They're a group of 7, which are pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. This theory went so far that SpongeBob's voice actor, Tom Kenny, had to do an interview to debunk it. Inside the debate, the community decided that each sin fit one character. The results were Pride, Sandy. Pride is strongly associated with a deep satisfaction of individual achievements. During the series, Sandy is always proud of every invention she creates or how great her karate skills are, but always thinking about herself. Greed, Mr. Krabs. Greed is the most selfish desire for something, especially wealth or power. Well, I think there's no need to explain Mr. Krabs' passion for money, right? Lust, Pearl. Lust is known to be an intense sexual desire. There's many times where we see Pearl searching for the perfect boyfriend or even wanting to meet TV stars. Envy, Plankton. Envy is an insatiable desire that is based around wanting things that others have. This is another clear example because how many times have we seen Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula? Gluttony, Mrs. Puff. Gluttony is the overindulgence in food. There are some episodes in which writers have speculated about Mrs. Puff being obsessed with food. Wrath, Squidward. Wrath is uncontrolled feelings of anger and hatred. We always say that Squidward is not the happiest person in Bikini Bottom, and sometimes he even has problems controlling his anger. Sloth, Patrick. Sloth is excessive laziness. Outside of being SpongeBob's best friend, Patrick is known to be a really laid-back and lazy person, so much that it looks excessive. Depending on where you look at this theory, there are times where Gary is considered a great candidate for the position of gluttony too. So, there you have it. These are some SpongeBob theories that you can find on the internet. If you like this kind of content, please tell us in the comments and subscribe to our channel so we can provide you with even more spectacular SpongeBob content.